Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Choujin X, Chapter 19. When we last left our heroes, a bunch of stuff happened. While Tokyo and Ellie were on their way home from the mall incident, they were considering stopping at a festival, but then they got attacked by Ume. This fight broke out between Tokyo, Ellie, and Ume, and Tokyo and Ellie pretty soundly lost. Ume was able to turn Tokyo into a slip of paper and make away with him. Also, Azuma was nearby, and so he went to talk to Ellie about what the hell happened to Tokyo, which led to Ellie finding a payphone to call Yamato Mori about what just happened. So now they're all going to head towards the motel where Ume took Tokyo, thanks to some more torture at Sato's hands from more of Nari torturing Sato. There we go. They've told Tokyo to stay the hell out of this, but that's not likely to happen. Meanwhile, Ume's off to go get whoever they're giving Tokyo to, I think, leaving Ricardo to sort of hang out with Tokyo for a while. He gets him some pizza. Tokyo's not on board with this because, you know, Ricardo's buddy just nearly killed a bunch of people. But he's still there's still this continuing thread of, like, who are the bad guys here? Ricardo is, like, so nice. And Tokyo has this, they're bad guys, aren't they? And that's paired, that's immediately followed by Sato torturing Nari. So that all felt very sort of significant to me. But anyway, all that being said, Yamato Mori is headed towards the motel where Tokyo is. Azuma's heading there a bit secretly. And yeah, that said, let's dive right on into Chapter 19, Paper Trip. And we open with what looks to be a flashback of Azuma with, like, a bunch of trophies. There's, like, championship banner, a certificate of commendation, multiple of those, like a baseball trophy. But then we also see Azuma, like, in the fetal position in, like, a tent, maybe? We see a wheelchair just sort of creep towards him, and he looks up. And then we're out of flashback land. I believe we're talking with No Mask Guy on the phone with Ume. Have you secured him? I expected nothing less from you and Ricardo. I'd like to visit him immediately. You are still at the same motel? And Ume responds, yes. Or that might be the apothecary she mentioned last chapter. It's unclear if No Mask and apothecary are the same guy, because we just don't know enough about the inner workings of this organization at this point. But anyway, Ume just sort of sits back, crosses her legs. That was easy. But then we see Ellie hanging off a water tower, I guess looking on to O'Neill. And she says, Kagomura, I'm here. At O'Neill and Minami. And Simon tells her, Roger, tell us if you notice anything off. Also, don't use your abilities anywhere within a 100-meter radius of the building. It might make them suspicious. And we see Simon and Maiko, like, riding a fucking motorcycle to get there. But yeah, they're sort of making their way towards O'Neill, and Ellie thinks, can they feel the tingle too? I mean, obviously they are Choujin, but she still sort of is concerned, is this really all I can do? I kind of get how Higashi feels. So that's an interesting bit, especially given that we know that Azuma is not the type to just sit back and let everyone else save Tokyo, especially given last week's cliffhanger. But then we cut to inside the building, and Ricardo's, like, watching TV, as Tokyo just sits there really uncomfortable. He's not really on board. I just love Ricardo so much. He's so neat. He's so funny. That's my man right there. On the TV, what did you do yesterday? And it's these two guys talking, and I sort of brought up attention last week to, like, there were these moments, specifically right before the dynamite went off in the train station, where, like, the random passerby looked like live-action people. And we're seeing that again here on the TV. These two guys look like live-action people. And I'm not quite sure, I don't think this is Fire Force, where, like, the live-action people are actually live-action or something. But I don't know. There still is just something weird about all this. Anyway, what did you do yesterday? And the other guy on the TV responds in Arabic, I think. Wait, I can understand you. Ha 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 ha. There's like a laugh track going on there for this not terribly funny comedy. And then as we see like the laughter, and Ricardo looks up this, love it. We see so there's two panels here. The second one is of Azuma walking. The first one is an arm holding a rock. Actually, that might be Tokyo, and like he gave in to the pizza after last chapter with like a half-eaten slice of pizza, maybe. But no, because it looks like Tokyo's wearing a short-sleeved shirt. And that's clearly a long sleeve. We can see the cuff down at his wrist in that panel. So maybe that's Ricardo? I think it might be Ricardo. He does have human arms. It could be him. But anyway, we cut to Azuma walking through the city towards Minami. And we see this like Kita Senshi rail line, I guess. As I'm assuming this is Azuma's thoughts. Hey, Dad. Oh, this is like a flashback. He's like walking on the train tracks with his father. The tracks on the right go to Yamato, right? So where do the ones on the left go? And he walks, and like there's this special attention drawn to his sneakers as they snap on a branch. I'm not quite sure why. And his father says, "Come with me." Azuma's dad is a cop, right? That's really all we know about his father. Let me see if the wiki says what exactly his father does. Yeah, due to his father being an accomplished police officer. So his father is a cop. But just the way this whole thing is drawn, with his face in the complete shadow, there's a little bit something suspicious going on there. Anyway, come with me. And young Azuma just sort of pauses at that, not quite sure to respond. And as they're walking, ouch, my blister popped. I've been walking for so long, I wonder what we'll find. And as they walk, they get to this, like, collapsed train station. I have no idea where we're going with this flashback at all. Okay. So, as present-day Azuma reflects on this, he thinks, those rails led to nowhere. Whenever I can't make a choice, I think about that abandoned railroad again. So, like, he has a choice here to do nothing or to go help out rescuing Tokyo, and maybe awakening whatever latent Choujin powers the serum didn't quite awaken in him, if my theory is still correct. And one of those choices leads to nowhere, and one of them leads to forward action. Doing nothing leads to nowhere, I presume. But as he thinks, I should go back. He keeps on like inner monologuing, and it's two types of inner monologue. One is like a thought bubble, and one is narration. And I'm curious what Ishida is doing with that. But in the narration, Tokyo thinks, just like he said, I'll just slow them down. But what if I do nothing and something happens to Tokyo? To shirk justice is cowardice. And in the thought bubble, he says, Dad, is the path I'm choosing to go down now the right track? So back to that metaphor where he doesn't know which is which. You know, one of them leads nowhere and one of them doesn't. And then he sees the hyena again. The hyena from the end of 16. And the hyena speaks. Excuse me. And, okay, so this is definitely, there goes any more of the concept of theorizing whether or not Azuma really is a Choujin. This confirms it. He can speak to this hyena the same way Tokyo can speak to the birds. So I guess he's some kind of mammalian Choujin. Like, if Tokyo's a bird, a vulture in particular, well, it would fit with that chapter 1 metaphor. Azuma being a lion, which is a mammal similar to a hyena, just like how Tokyo can talk to birds that aren't vultures. So yeah, I'm assuming this is going to be the chapter where you get full confirmation that Azuma is a beast Choujin. But anyway, Azuma is just sort of stunned as he sees a hyena talk to him, and just asks, "What?" And the hyena questions, "Would you be kind enough to point me to the ocean?" And Azuma's just like sweating now. The ocean? And he points him the right way. Much obliged. And the hyena just leaves, as Azuma is just, what the fuck just happened? But he looks up, and there's O'Neill Motel. A sign for it pointing right there, with, of course, that fucking tower in the background. which is always an ominous sign, that tower. But then we had cut to Ellie just sort of chilling on the rooftop. Beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop. I think it's just her talking to herself or something. I'm famished. Or maybe not, because the beep boops and the bop boops in this next panel don't really point to anything like the I'm famished does. But then Ellie looks down and she sees Tokyo approaching the motel. Higashi, and we cut back to Azuma, who's having this, more inner monologue thing. It must be a sign. And then it's like two separate inner monologues going on here. Because we have and then Tokyo risked his life to save me. If a Choujin is someone who becomes the form they seek, then being a Choujin fits Tokyo perfectly. And after that, we have the other part of the inner monologue, going to make the right choice. And we have this parallel. The way this two-page spread is structured. We have, on the top right, we have Azuma's It Must Be a Sign. And then on the top left, we have Ume on her phone. And then we have this, larger bottom panel, as Azuma thinks, I want to be the kind of person who would risk his life for a friend, too. And we see they have found each other. There's this, steel girder in the way, which, steel beams bring to mind another Sui Ishida series. And it's sort of like this division between the two of them. But they have found each other, because in reality, that beam is, far above them. But Ume just, locks eyes with him and just says, no entry. And he's kind of nervous. He's found the enemy Choujin. I'm assuming he somehow knows that. Either because he maybe saw her leave the train station, or he knows this is the motel, and who else would be barring entry but the Choujin who kidnapped Tokyo. But Azuma seems to realize that he's in for a fight now. And he sort of, spreads out his legs. I will make the right choice. And he puts up his fist. He's ready for a fight, even if he has no chance of winning, he thinks. Give me back my friend. And Ume just, stares him down. No light in those eyes. As there is a light that then sort of shines down between the two of them. I'm not sure where that's supposed to be coming from, because it's supposed to be the middle of the night here, right? And I don't think Yamato Mori has, found them yet. There's no, announcer or, megaphone coming down to, talk to demand Ume's surrender or anything. It's just a light that's just there. But Azuma seems to kind of ignore it, gets a little bit nervous, shuffling around, but still ready to go. Ume sort of sighs, gets up, undoes her guitar scissor case. And Azuma has this kind of moment of panic as he sort of, dances his feet around, and before she can really ready her weapons, he goes in for the kick. That feels like maybe the sheer force of that, especially given how fast we saw Ume was last week. There's more than just a kick there. That feels like maybe he's tapping into some latent Choujin abilities. I don't know. But he goes for the kick, but Ume turns herself into paper, and the kick is not effective at all. As she sort of jumps up as the scissors unfurl or unfold, she grabs them, turning back into a person. You'll die. Or she's only half person. Her legs are still paper. But she comes down and runs at Azuma with the scissors. And as she swipes at him, Azuma just ducks out of the way. Barely dodging, but still dodging. Giving credence to the idea that his Choujin powers are activating now. But as he bends backwards, he brings his foot up to kick her. He's doing actual damage to her in a way that neither Tokyo nor Ellie could, just by maybe like I've been saying, maybe there is some It's more than possible that some latent amount of Choujin power is like sneaking out through here, but not in the way like a beastification, in the way of like a little bit more physical strength. But anyway, we get some more narration. This one can't be coming from like a character's head because there's no way that Tokyo would know this. Ririka Umezawa, Ability 1, Paper Moon, October Queen. Shapes that she fashions out of paper are endowed with the properties of the objects they represent. And as this like newfound bits of paper all sort of like, as he kicks her, her top half turns to paper and dissipates everywhere. Ability 2, Paper Trip. She can transform anything she touches into paper. If an individual touches the paper a second time, the effect will be undone. We saw both parts of that last chapter when she turned Tokyo into paper and when Ricardo undid the paper. This ability can also be used on herself, which would explain why half of her body is made of paper now. Also, we see her face mask fall off in that earlier panel. Maybe there's some secret to her face we'll see. But thanks to that ability, she quickly reconstitutes herself and just kicks Tokyo in the crotch, it looks like. Or no, not the crotch. She digs her heel into his chest. And Tokyo spits up spit. And it's hurling back. He's sweating bullets now. He's been beat up. That did a number on him. And Ume stabs her scissors into his eye, it looks like. Oh no. Not his eye. There's this moment of confusion as Azuma doesn't know what happens. And she holds up his severed ear, just chopped off. Okay. And Azuma tries to see his missing ear, and he just sees this stream of blood running down his neck. And Ume questions, "Are you sure you came to save him? Or did you come here to test yourself?" As Azuma's grabbing his ear in pain, which does sort of dance around this sort of issue with Azuma, that question. Because Azuma has sort of been pondering his own weakness. Ever since Tokyo became a Choujin, he's been sort of, whenever we see him, he's still a good friend, but he's kind of wrapped up. He's not full late part 1 Sasuke or anything, but he's still wrapped up in this feeling of uselessness. Tokyo is so much stronger than him now, and so who is he? And, maybe in part, why didn't he get any Choujin powers from that serum? Though, as you know now, he kind of did. But as Ume drops his ear, on occasion, people like you try to pick fights with me. You're confident in your own abilities and you want proof of your strength, or something like that. For whatever reason, you've convinced yourself that if you fight a Choujin, maybe you'll get powers too. Pitiful. Well, with Tokyo, and with Azuma, there's some proof to that. And then we see Ume's face. And she's got, her face is basically normal, but from the corners of her lips, out in this kind of triangular fashion, it looks like decayed or something? Maybe akin to Dabi's face in MHA. But it's a really neat panel. The way the art style changes, the way it's she's all in white there with this pitch black background with a few shards of white. It's a neat fucking panel there. If I recall, you kicked me in the face. And Ricardo and Tokyo both feel the use of Choujin powers right there. And Ricardo looks around. Ume's ticked off. And maybe this is part of his powers? But Tokyo is all of a sudden, bound. Maybe those are tentacles tying him with his face tentacles? But he's a cocoon at this point. And Ricardo just tells him, "Stay put!" And he falls over. Tokyo's left lying there on the floor. "Well, I can't move." And thinks, she's fighting. But who would... Could it be the people from Yamato Mori? And Tokyo's actually able to escape. With full beastification, breaks free of Ricardo's tentacles, and he's able to sneak out. But he's real kind of shrimpy there. As he notes, he comes to the roof and thinks, I'm kind of scrawny. Guess I'm out of fuel? And he looks around, whoa, where am I? Minami? And then we see Paper Trip is in full effect, attacking Azuma, as Ume is just like a million sheets of paper flying around him and cutting into him, battered, bloody, cut up. We see this, he like falls over and his face is just like dripping blood. He's fucked up here. And as he like catches himself on the ground, we see all these like new scars on his arm. He sees those that crossroads again, the railroad. And then another area that I don't think is where he is right now, though it might be. The square tile pattern matches. But I don't know. He's sort of kind of realizing his outmatchness, I guess. And he looks up as Ume has become this like cross of strips of paper. What are you fighting against? I think he's asking himself this as Ume does something. And then, I think it's like meant to be like the switch of a rail line, like swapping which direction the train goes. As we get this zoom in on his eye, and we see the lever, and another zoom in on the eye, and the lever turns. And so Azuma's cut to ribbons. He's fully severed at the waist. The legs are in decent condition, but we see a chunk that's like his head and torso, one that's like both of his arms are separated. We see a single elbow that's just apart from the rest. Chapter 19, Paper Trip. To be continued. And yeah, we don't know when it's coming back because this is Choujin next, and there is no rhyme or reason to when these chapters come out. So we're gonna have to stick with that for a while. Okay, so I'm thinking if I'm going to consider Azuma, like, if I'm going to consider the possibility that Azuma's actually dead here. Because, we haven't seen regenerative abilities as an inherent part of being a Choujin like we did with Ghoul. But it's also not inherently impossible. And so much of the early part of this chapter is building up the fact that Azuma is a Choujin. Like with that scene with the hyena, that really random scene. There's just 2 pages that like could be taken out if Azuma just dies here. You could lose these 2 pages and you lose nothing. And also like from a writing standpoint, Ishida's clearly building something with Azuma's arc. Right, the feelings of uselessness, the feelings of, like, the scene with the hyena, both in 16 and in this chapter, are clearly pointing to something happening to Azuma. And it would feel kind of a waste if Azuma just dies here. I mean, maybe Ishida just really wants to separate this from Ghoul by killing off the best friend character in chapter 19. I don't know. It is a grisly fucking image. If this gets an anime, it's gonna be one of those scenes that like I'm gonna be looking forward to seeing this whole thing going on here with Azuma. I don't know. There's just a whole lot. I'm really hyper focused on that last scene because hot damn that last scene, that last panel. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of like some of the thematic work I've been talking about for so long about like good and evil and who decides what's right, who decides what's wrong is not really here this chapter. It's the Azuma Higashi show more than is any of Tokyo and Ellie's sort of, especially Tokyo's wonderings on justice or whatever. But also it's weird to have this like unexplained looking back at the first page, this unexplained Azuma flashback. It doesn't really go anywhere. The same chapter Azuma dies. So I think he's gonna be fine. I think he'll this will be what it takes to activate a beast mode, and he'll come back. He'll like respawn or like regenerate or whatever. But yeah, like that fucking happened. But like really looking at it, every single thing here is about Azuma. Even the things that aren't about Azuma are still kind of about Azuma. Like looking at this short little Ellie, both of Ellie's scenes in this chapter, you know, Ellie's is this really all I can do? I kind of get how Higashi feels, tying into, you know, Azuma obviously, and there's a little bit more to that scene than just that, but that's the really important part. And then again, her other scene is just her seeing Azuma in the distance headed towards the motel. But then yeah, we fucking see Azuma. And for someone who hasn't quite activated their Choujin powers yet, that's some beast shit there. The kick he gives Ume, just so much actual like physical damage in a way Tokyo and Ellie couldn't do despite having their Choujin powers. That's some good shit there. It doesn't quite accomplish much, as you know, Ume is still vastly outmatches him, as he learns the hard way, both by losing an ear and the rest of him. But you know, there's a lot there. There's just a lot there. But with that, I'm trying to figure out what to fucking say here. Azuma's in a very, very bad place, assuming he's not just fucking dead. And I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens next. I don't know what will happen next. Either Azuma will somehow regenerate with a beastification or something, or I don't know, or Tokyo will have to deal with the fact that his best friend is dead trying to save him, and Azuma's whole character arc is the sort of tragic, you know, what could have been. And I do think, to be fair, like a what could have been character arc can work. I don't think Azuma being dead here is inherently bad writing. But I'm curious to see how exactly Ishida will pull all this off. Anyway, wild chapter this week. I just don't fucking know what's happening next. So with that said, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you'll enjoy the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, you know, do whatever makes you happy, you know? And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!